Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, Justin Baker co-host. Here we are. Here we go. Playoffs are upon us, and we've got about 2 weeks left to go in the regular season. And so with that, 10 days, this works out perfectly because we have 10 storylines to follow as the regular season closes and we head towards the playoffs. So with that said, we're just going to kind of throw out different topic ideas and things that we'll be watching for here as the season comes to an end, and why you too should be watching for these things. And don't forget, you can always follow us on Twitter. And while you're listening to the show in real time, it's not really real time for us, but like it's real time for you. In real time while listening to the show, you can tweet at us and disagree or strongly agree, as I'm sure everyone does with me and not with you.
That's actually true.
Yeah, that's
factual.
True. That's true. Although you are our main tweeter, so
that's true. I do.
They'll encounter you more often, I think.
Yeah, I do try to look for any way I can to rip on you at some point on the Twitter.
I noticed that.
It's a rare thing, though. You've guarded yourself very well. So.
All right. Well, let's start with something that's going to happen immediately. That's actually number 10 on our list. Rather than starting at number 1. Montreal and Columbus play Thursday night. We're recording this Wednesday night, so they play Thursday night. Obviously, we know both those teams are just in a battle for a playoff spot, that last wild card spot in the East. Columbus 88 points, Montreal 90. Columbus does have one game in hand, and I tend to look at this game and I think, man, if Montreal can pull this win out somehow, then I think that Columbus is all but completely eliminated from the playoffs from what I can foresee for the rest of this season. You might think otherwise.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, to be quite honest, because for one specific reason, and it's the schedule down the stretch, right? I mean, you look at what Montreal's got to do, and they got to play some tough teams, obviously Columbus being one of those teams trying to get in the playoffs, but more so than any, they've got to go play at Winnipeg on Saturday, and then,
Yeah, and then Tampa Bay comes in town, and then they go to Washington, and then they play Toronto. Now, here's the other side of it is that, okay, that's fine. Those teams don't have a lot to play for at that point. And if you're Tampa Bay, are you not thinking, all right, maybe if we lose, would you rather play Montreal or Columbus in the playoffs?
Well, I think any team would rather play Montreal. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I think...
And Tampa Bay might have that choice.
I don't think Tampa Bay, the way they've been playing all year...
they care.
It's not that I don't think they care. I think maybe they're not going to let off the gas at any point, I don't think, during the season, because I think once they do let off the gas, there might be that mindset or worry that, oh, shoot, we slow down a little bit. Come playoff time, we're not going to be able to pick it back up, right? So I think they just want to continue dominance wherever they can. And shoot, I mean, some of those players are looking at, the win record here, and is one of our other points we'll talk about. But maybe they might want to shoot for that. And but
that game, like the game against Toronto, final game of the season, it's not going to mean anything for the Leafs.
No, not at all.
That game is so it's going to be Garrett Sparks in net, and likely I think that you see some players maybe resting. There's a chance.
For sure. But I think like Washington, for example, they might still be fighting for that number 1 spot in the Metro against teams like Pittsburgh and the Islanders. So, they might still have to, lay it on thick and heavy. So, sorry, Montreal. Whereas Columbus, they get to play teams like Ottawa, and they should have an easier road to the end of their schedule, which, let's face it, Bobrovsky's been hot lately. I think 3 shutouts here in his last, I don't know how many games, but he's been hot.
He finally looks like the Bobrovsky we've been waiting to see.
Yeah, and so this team, I think, has a lot more to play for given everything that they gave up at the deadline, and I think there's going to be more pressure on them to perform than it would Montreal. If Montreal gets in, great. That's awesome. Good for them. They weren't expected to get in this year, but Columbus, they were definitely expected to be in this year, and not only be in, but be a contender as far as they pushed Washington last year.
Columbus has to play Nashville and Boston.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know where we're getting,
but
to this place.
Those two teams, I think maybe not Nashville, but Boston. There's a team that I think they're going to start playing their third and fourth liners a lot more because they don't really have to worry. I don't think about Toronto overtaking them for number 2. So
yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if Boston's like, to me, Boston. Why would they rest their guys? A lot of them have missed significant portions
of
the season.
Older guys. They've got a lot of guys over 30. So
we'll see. Okay. All right. So obviously the playoff race in the East is pretty cool, but maybe the West is a little more interesting in terms of who actually can get in. I think Chicago has this like a 1 or 2% chance that they get in.
It's very minimal. I mean, they've got. Listen, Colorado 76 game played, but the two teams they've got to jump in front of them, Minnie and Arizona, have played 77. So you think even with that game at hand, they win, right? They're only a point behind Minnesota, and then at that point, they're 3 points behind Colorado.
But that win's got to come against the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, a team that really needs to get it going because they've been struggling lately, and they they lost to Detroit last night. They did not look good at all. I mean, you look at I can't remember who scored that goal, but Glendening down below the net, and both defenders collapsed at him and just left him wide open in front to just rip it home. And so, again, this San Jose team's one that needs to get it going, so they're going to be tough to play against, I think.
On the one hand, they do get to play LA, so there's one win in the column for Chicago, but they have to play San Jose. Then they also play Winnipeg, St. Louis, Dallas, and Nashville. So I'm going to say it right now. Chicago, you're out of the playoffs. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Even if Chicago won all the rest of their games, I think there's still a chance that they miss the playoffs. A strong chance. Because that still means that Colorado has 6 games left. And if Colorado goes 3-2-1 over those 6 games, they still make the playoffs. And Chicago doesn't. So, I think we're assuming here that probably down the stretch, Colorado figures it out. Although, such a weird night, like a weird couple nights where Colorado loses to Chicago, Arizona loses to Chicago, and Minnesota loses to Nashville, where all 3 of those teams, their last games, they had a chance to jump each other. Nobody could win.
It's that Western, that bottom half of the Western, just
it's
all season long.
Awful.
They just don't know.
It's awful.
Yeah, nobody wants to win.
It actually is. Like, now that you take a step back and look at it, when St. Louis was behind some of those teams, it's not surprising that they jumped all of them because we knew that St. Louis had the depth and the talent to be. It was just goaltending, and then Binnington figured it out, and now St. Louis has pulled ahead, and so it's not surprising that they jumped all those teams because none of those teams want to win.
No, they don't.
I think that's a good transition to maybe one of our number 8 on our list here, the goaltending battles.
Ooh,
prior to the playoffs. I really like this one. Yes, I really like where your head was going on this one. So let's kind of talk through some of these. We'll start with Binnington and Allen in St. Louis. Is there really any argument that Allen might start in the playoffs?
My only argument is thinking Allen has the experience in the playoffs, and he's shown that he can tear it up in the playoffs too in the past. So, if you're St. Louis, you're thinking, let's go with the veteran guy, the guy who has shown he can steal a series for us. Yeah, I think that was against Minnesota where he absolutely destroyed them. I could be wrong on that. So somebody fact check me and tweet us.
I just deleted your Binnington and Allen.
Thank you. But you know what? I think at this point it's 90% Binnington, 10% Allen at this point. But again,
I think you're being too nice to Allen.
Too nice? Okay.
Well, let's stick in the West. Is there any chance that Aaron Dell hops in over Martin Jones? Because I don't think he's really been any better.
No, I don't think he's been any better either. But it depends what Jones does down the stretch. If he craps out and just is absolutely horrible, does San Jose say, hey, you know what? Let's give Dell a try in the playoffs? Because same thing happened with Grubauer last year and Holtby. It was Holtby's net all year long. Grubauer was playing fine. He wasn't playing great, but he was playing fine. And Holtby just was that terrible that they were like, crap, let's put Grubauer in.
Yeah.
So
that's true. I guess I could see for, let's say the first 2 games, St. Louis drops them and they get badly outscored by Vegas. You might see Aaron Dell hop in the net. I just don't know how much of a real shift that is.
Sure.
Whereas Grubauer, versus Holtby, Grubauer was really showing that he was ready to be a number one. Granted, it hasn't really worked out. But I guess Grubauer, again, for the second season in a row, is kind of in this, do we play Grubauer or do we play the other goalie, which now it's Varlamov in Colorado. Grubauer's been playing really good.
Yeah, last 10. Yeah. He's 6-2-1, 966 save percentage and 3 shutouts. I think he was the third star of the week for the NHL.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. So he's been hot, and I think he's the reason, honestly, why Colorado is in that second wildcard spot right now. So,
is goaltending, though, the reason why they're fighting for their life?
No.
Isn't this the reason? To me, their goaltending had struggled at different points during the year. Like Grubauer has not been great. Varlamov hasn't been great. They've had their little stretches where they've been okay, but to me, there's a depth scoring issue in Colorado, but it's not like they're bottom of the league in terms of being able to score goals.
No, I mean they got almost 50 more
10th.
goals than the team in front of them.
Right,
Dallas.
they're 10th in goals. So I mean, obviously the issue has been being able to defend. I guess they're 17th in goals against.
Not the worst, but I think it's consistency that's been the issue for them more than anything else.
Fair,
so.
yeah, that's fair. How about we'll last one in the Western Conference, Smith or Ritchie, because this one I think is legitimate.
Yeah, this one is more legitimate than I think almost any one of them. Because Mike Smith, again, we've seen it in Arizona where he can come in and steal playoff series, right? And he can go the distance. He got all the way down almost to the Stanley Cup Finals there.
Yeah,
and so. Do you play that guy or do you play Ritchie, who has really, I think, cemented himself as, Calgary's number one at this point, and Smith isn't too far behind him, but none of them, Ritchie hasn't played outstanding. He's played good. But Smith has just been below average, subpar at this point.
Well, and this is, I guess, the nice problem is that, all right, yeah, you're right. Ritchie hasn't been out of this world. He's been good enough, and Calgary's been able to outscore any issues, and they have a very solid defense in front of them. What we kind of thought last season would look like in front of them. And so I think if Ritchie falters at all, you're not scared to go Mike Smith in the net. But I do think that you start the playoffs with Ritchie.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a short leash for sure. You don't want to say Ritchie, okay, you know what, we're pulling the plug on you like the first goal against, but
the Florida Panthers did against that game was crazy. The Leafs 7-5, but he was pulled 4 minutes and 22 seconds into the game after they scored 3 goals and they pulled him. And yeah, they weren't all great goals, but they were all defensive.
Oh yeah, they were defensive
pas.
passes for sure.
It was the fastest a goalie had ever been pulled against the Maple Leafs.
Really?
Which the freaking Maple Leafs have been around since
forever.
The 20s.
Yeah.
So we're talking in basically 100 years, which is a lot of games. No one's ever been pulled that quick.
Interesting. That's a great little stat.
Let's go to the Eastern Conference. Your boy, Peter Mrazek and McElhinney.
Both those guys playing pretty good hockey.
This one maybe is the hardest one out of all of them.
Yeah, I think, Mrazek, he looked pretty good in a couple of those series against Tampa back when he was in Detroit. However, he obviously didn't get any goal support. McElhinney, on the other hand, he's the veteran, right? He's the older guy. He's calm.
He's never.
No,
I don't think he's ever had a playoff start.
I don't think so either. So, I think at this point, you probably go Mrazek just because he does have the experience. But I think, again, just like Ritchie, I think the leash is kind of short here,
Yeah, it'll be that one is really, honestly, I don't know. I don't know who they're going to go with because Mrazek's played well, and then they go to McElhinney, and he plays just as well. So maybe here down the stretch, one guy gets the bulk of the starts, and then we kind of get our answer. Or maybe they just, hey, we're going to start you, but...
Or maybe they call up Scott Darling and say, hey, you ready to start the playoffs?
What if they did something where they went, yeah, you're going to start, and then you're going to start the next game.
It's not, that would be kind of cool, actually.
Be interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go to our last one with Robin Lehner and Thomas Greiss, two guys that have essentially turned their careers around with great years. And, I should say maybe they didn't turn it around so much as Mr. Barry Trotz turned their careers around. The New York Islanders lead the league in goals against with 188 goals. They're tied with the Dallas Stars, but granted, they've scored 19 more goals than the Stars. So, who's your guy? You're Barry Trotz. Who are you going with for Game 1 against Pittsburgh?
First off, both guys 42 games played, 22 wins each. Greiss a 926, Leonard a 928 save percentage. That's the only difference. Like a razor thin margin between the two guys. Yeah. Honestly, I think I would probably go with Thomas Greiss, just because he's been around the club a little bit longer. He's been there. He's got a couple years left in his deal. But on the flip side, if you want to entice Leonard to come back and re-sign him, you got to start him in the playoffs and say, hey, you're probably our guy.
Yeah, and this might be you lose 2 games and you're out.
Right. Oh yeah,
like we're going with the other guy, especially unless they're losing 1-0 or pulling a Jonathan Quick, having the greatest save percentage, and you lose all 4 games. So yeah, there are a lot of those things to be watching down the stretch. Like who gets the starts here in the final games, and maybe the very last game of the regular season is actually a really good indicator of who won't be the starter in the playoffs.
Some rest,
because that may be a rest. Yeah. Where do you want to go next?
Ooh, where do I want to go next? I want to talk about Phil Housley in Buffalo.
Okay.
This was actually the first thing I thought of when we started talking about this, because I remember watching that game. I would say about half of it last night, because then I just got bored with it after a minute. With Ottawa and Buffalo last night, losing 4-0. Just pitiful.
And just, 2 horrible teams. But they look bad.
Yeah, they look
like, how do you not get up and go, we can go in and beat this Ottawa team? Like, let's go.
I get it. Like, Ottawa has nothing to play for. They're the underdog.
But neither does Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. They're not making the playoffs. They've got nothing left to really play for except for just pride at this point. And obviously, when you play the worst team,
obviously they have none.
Yeah, I think if this team was the way they were roster-wise the whole entire season, they could have been worse than Colorado, a few years back, where they set like that modern day, just horrible point total.
Yes.
But Buffalo, 4-0 loss last night against Ottawa, and that's 13 straight losses on the road. I am just curious to see if Phil Housley actually survives the season at this point.
Well, it's crazy because we actually talked about him being coach of the year.
At one point, yeah. They were sitting atop the East and number 1. Like, this team was almost, at one point halfway through the season, I thought this team's got to be a lock to at least get a wild card. Like, they can't falter that bad.
Yeah,
and they did.
It sure was looking like they were going to make a push. Maybe they would be one of those surprise teams. There's usually a team where it's like, wow, didn't expect them to be that good. And actually, now that everything's kind of settled, I guess what do we say? Would we say that team is probably the New York Islanders?
Oh, they're definitely
that team this year. Like nobody expected them to make the playoffs. Yeah,
we all had them, and I'm one of them at the bottom of the East. To be quite honest, I thought after losing their best scorer, and they lose Halak, he's gone. Granted, I really didn't think he was a difference maker, but you lose a guy like that. You bring in Leonard, who was just mediocre last year in Buffalo, if not below average. And granted, Barry Trotz is a great coach, but I didn't think he was going to flip him around like this. So,
yeah, it helps when you're not having difficult scoring chances against you. Right. Things are properly aligned. You're not going to have to make unbelievable saves, and that's definitely something. Barry Trotz has worked on the angles with them very well, to where they're not being put in precarious situations to make these saves that he's just not capable of making. I really like the idea of Tampa Bay breaking this wins record,
dude. That's crazy to think about. Like,
I mean, when you think about how historic of a season they're having, it's like it's hardly getting talked about at all. I mean, right now, I looked it up before the show. So they're at a plus 100 goals differential.
Stop it.
The last team to have over 100 goals for, or like a differential is the Ottawa Senators in 05-06. They were a plus 103.
That was a freaking good team back then.
Yes. The year following that, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Anaheim Ducks. But I mean, they're three plus goals away from tying that. My guess is that they exceed that with the schedule that they have left. And so then you're looking at, I didn't even go any further than that, but I did go and I was like, oh, who had the best goal differential of all time? Was the 76-77 Canadians, just a plus 216.
Just a plus. Yeah, that's not a shocker at all, to be quite honest. I figured it would be that 70s, mid-70s Canadian teams or an 80s Oiler team, to be quite honest. I would have thought anyways, but just ridiculous. I mean, if you think about it, I honestly, even if they don't eclipse the 62 win record set by the Red Wings in 95-96, or even if they get within one or two, I think, to be quite honest, I think that feat is more impressive to me because of how much balance the league is supposed to have right now. And that's what the salary cap was meant to do when they went through the lockout. It's supposed to create balance so that teams like, we've seen it with LA and even Arizona when they, got all the way up to the Western Conference Finals, how these teams at the bottom of the standings have an opportunity to really compete against, the top teams. It's not like the NBA now where you just look at it and you're like, oh, there's, Oklahoma City and Golden State and everybody else sucks. Yeah. Like, that's it. So now there's competitive balance and they're still able to go out and dominate to such an extent that we're talking about eclipsing some records here. Yeah, and so I agree with that. On the one hand, there's parity is much different now. When Detroit was winning, I mean, they were spending a lot of money. Oh, yeah. And when Montreal won 60 games, which is the second highest win total, that team was totally stacked. They had so many things working in their advantage with the draft and all these other pieces that, and I mean, really there was, at the time, there's 12, 15 teams, something like that. Yeah, very few. Half of them were just terrible garbage teams with a lot of 40-year-old veterans that were washed up. Yeah, exactly. So there was definitely not the same amount. That team was crazy dominant, but there definitely wasn't a bunch of other teams that were also really good. I mean, there's some really good teams also that that Tampa Bay has to go up against, and they tend to blow by them. Granted, on the other side, you can say, well, there's shootouts now. Tampa Bay has won 6 games in a shootout. So, there's 6 games where if this was Detroit, would have been ties. They didn't have it would have been ties. Now, but then you could say, well, because there was ties, if you really wanted those wins, you just go after it in overtime, and for the points, you don't have to necessarily go after the. You can play a little more defensive in overtime, or you can try to keep possession for longer. And so the strategy all changes. I mean, you can always go back and forth on, well, but now they have this advantage. Well, but they also have this disadvantage now. So I think all in all, when everything comes together, we're looking at something that's just impressive. Yeah. And you get this many wins. If they get 63 wins, it's not something we've never seen before. Nope. It's incredible. So, yeah, I mean, and just everything else that they're doing, they're going to break some, or at least push some records, and this is their year. It's got to be their year. They need to win the cup, because I think that after this, they're going to have, somebody's going to go, Palat or Gord, or, they're going to start losing their depth guys. Yeah, they're going to run into a Chicago situation where the cap starts biting them, because Braden Point needs a new deal. Right. Fortunately for them, though, Kucherov is young and Stamkos is younger. So they're not going to run into the same, their players are, not only are they making a ton of money, they're old and declining. And they got lucky that they got Hedman and McDonough on some reasonable contracts, too. The only question mark to me is, Vasilevsky, how much does it cost them? And Braden Point, I think those are the two biggest, killers right there. So we'll see, but should be interesting. All right, let's. Where do you want to go next? We've got 4 more. Let's talk about Ovi. Okay. Yeah. So, scores number 49 last night. Yes, I mean, he'll definitely get 50. I don't think there's any question about that. He's kind of slowed down a little bit, which I think is fine. At this point, he's won the Stanley Cup, and now I think he's going, all right, I'm just going to hang out till the playoff. I know, obviously he's not taking his foot off the pedal, but it's not as crucial that he scores a bunch of goals right now. And although now that there's a couple players on his heel, he'll probably jump up, score some goals. I think early on in the season too, he was running on a lot of adrenaline. Right, we just won the cup, all that excitement, and then I think too there was a lot of doubters that they're going to get that Stanley Cup hangover. Ovi's been partying literally till 4 a.m. every night with the cup. Right, they're not going to be able to do anything, and then boom, he comes out and just lights it up. They did have a little bit of a slow start as a team. Sure. Sure.
But yeah, it was crazy though. Draisaitl's second with 46 goals, Tavares at 45. Well, it was Draisaitl with 43, Tavares at 41. Tavares gets 4 goals. The next night, Draisaitl gets 3 and jumps ahead of him again. It's
crazy.
It is crazy how quickly things can change.
And Tampa Bay's got 2 40-goal scores. When's the last time you've seen that?
That's impressive.
That's how dominant those guys are.
That's very nice.
Yeah, what I'm interested in seeing is like how many 50, if we get more than 150 goal score this year, which would be fantastic. I can't remember the last time that's happened since the lockout.
Yeah, I think we've got Ovechkin, and then I do think that Draisaitl will probably hit 50.
That would be nice.
These are garbage games for the Oilers. They don't care. Now it's all about your own personal stats. You best believe he's going to score a few more.
Right.
So you've got 8 guys with between 90 and 99 points. Will any of them cross over 100 points to join Kucherov, McDavid, and
Patrick Kane? Yeah, I think Draisaitl, easy one. He's sitting at 99 right now, and I think, like you said, he'll probably hit 50. So
how does your team have 2 100-point scorers and you are not? It's not like they're just barely missing the playoffs. Like they've been out of the playoffs for the last 2 months.
And I read a stat too. Connor McDavid, he's going to hit career highs in goals, I think it was, or maybe it was assists. I can't remember, but it was career high in something, right? Draisaitl, he's hitting career high numbers. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, career high numbers. Alec Chason, career high numbers. All these, there's a bunch of guys on the team that are hitting career highs, and yet they're still so far out of the playoffs. It's mind-boggling. It's just
weird.
Yeah, but again, I think people are just reading into it a little bit more. It's really these guys don't perform that well to begin with, so now they're playing where they should be, and But so Draisaitl, I would think he's set to hit 100 points. Crosby, he'll get pretty dang close, I think, with Pittsburgh trying to push to get that number 1 seed. I don't think either one of those teams are scared to play the Islanders in the first round, but I think having that home ice would be nice for either team anyways, throughout most of the playoffs. So, Crosby might hit it. I think Boston's going to slow down. They're going to start shuffling up lines a little bit now that they've secured that number 2 spot, and I think you'll see guys get less ice time. So Brad Marchand, maybe not. Stamkos, maybe. We'll see how much they push on the throttle there.
But how badly do they whoop teams here at the end? We'll see. A couple more. We'll go down to the basement and then we'll close out on a high note.
Wonderful.
There is a small battle for the lottery picks, or a higher percentage chance of hitting a lottery pick. Right now, when you reverse engineer the league standings, you'll find, of course, Ottawa at the very bottom, and then LA with 64 points, Detroit with 66, and New Jersey with 67. Buffalo is 71. I'm gonna throw them out, but I guess they could be in there too. The Rangers also have 71. The Rangers have only played 75 games. I think that ultimately they finish a little bit. They finish around where they are. The real battle probably is around that LA, Detroit, New Jersey. They're all within 3 points of each other. Ottawa isn't actually playing for a pick. Theirs belongs to Colorado.
That's so bad.
It's looking like Colorado now is. I mean, what an absolute fleecing for Matt Duchene. We need to go and the Matt Duchene trade from Columbus. Like we'll look what they get. They got like a first round pick and
I can't remember
a little bit. Yeah, an okay return. And so that's what they got for Jack Hughes potentially. And yeah, it's rough. It's rough. And I think that it can't come soon enough for Ottawa. I think you're looking at another season just like this one next year. The league needs to do something about Eugene Melnyk. It's just they have to figure out something.
Nobody wants to go play there.
Nobody.
So they're not going to be able to sign free agents. They're going to have to overpay guys that don't deserve, more than $2 million. They're going to have to give them $5 million just to get up to the floor.
Yeah.
Or they're going to have to pull, Arizona and start taking on some bad contracts.
Yeah,
and,
I think so too.
Maybe Milan Lucic goes to Ottawa or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Will they be some team savior in terms of that? But I don't think they want to spend the money.
No, I don't think so either.
Have you seen what happens to different teams if particular players retire early? Like if Luongo retires early.
Oh, the recapture penalty?
The recapture stuff?
Yeah, I think Florida, if Luongo retires after this year, Florida would be on the hook, I think, for...
Florida.
No,
it's
Florida,
Vancouver.
No, Florida gets on the hook for a portion of it because they took the contract on for a certain length. Vancouver, I think it's for like...
Vancouver's like 2.9 if he retires this year.
Yeah, and...
It's like 4 or 5, and then it's 7.2 million.
Yeah, it's a
if
crazy
he retires
number.
with 1 year left. What a stupid rule.
Yeah, well, they put that in the newest CBA to punish guys that had 14-year contracts.
That had already done it.
Yeah, that had already done it. It's not like you were re-signing new contracts.
Yeah, you're like, hey, okay, here's the rules. Okay, we're going to change the rules, and we're going to punish you for doing things within
something
the rules of the old ways.
Right.
I think it's Shea Weber. If Shea Weber retires last year,
this has got to be crazy.
Nashville is on the hook for $20 million salary cap hit.
I think
$20 million. How?
See, now this is where I think the Red Wings are kind of circumventing things with Zetterberg. Same deal, right? They're just putting him on IR, saying, he's hurt, which is, I mean, true. He can't really play, but I mean, he would have retired.
Right.
So now they're just like, hey, just go on IR. We'll, extra. We don't want to get hit with a giant cap hit.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I think the Leafs will try and do the same thing with
Luongo,
Patrick Marleau.
Same thing. Yeah, exactly.
They'll see if maybe you don't play next year.
Another Joffrey Lupul situation where he gets a second opinion and
no, you're sick. Yeah. Sorry, you have a disease and you need to leave.
A disease. Yeah, but back to the lottery. My gosh, even if Ottawa finishes in the lottery, gets the first or second overall pick, it's still a freaking steal because there's some people that think that European winger from Finland, I think it is. I can't remember his name.
Keiko.
Yeah, he is almost as good, if not maybe better, because of the size.
Sure.
So, sucks to be Ottawa.
Yeah, they're definitely going to miss out on
They could have given up their first round pick from last year instead. They're like, no, we're going to hang on to it because we're going to be competitive.
Yeah, well, they did draft Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, I know, but still, I would rather give up Brady Tkachuk than Jack Hughes.
Yeah, how much worse would this team be without Brady Tkachuk?
Oh my gosh, it'd be terrible.
Yeah, I think that, sir, for me personally, I want the Red Wings to win this lottery.
I do. Well, I do too, obviously.
I know you do.
Fan, but I think it's best for the league because an original six franchise.
I want Jack Hughes to go to a team that matters.
Yeah, and not only that, but to get to play Toronto, that rivalry would get restored real quick.
I mean, it's no offense to people that cheer for the Oilers, but the Oilers don't matter. Now they don't matter.
Nobody watches them.
I would watch them if they were a good team though, but right now they don't matter, and I don't think they're ever going to be. They're not going to be managed properly until Daryl Cates sells this team.
No, and the problem is when you have a guy like Connor McDavid on the hook already on his new deal, like the fans want you to win now, so they're not going to be patient for a rebuild. So it's going to keep getting mismanaged because they're going to try to do quick fixes, and it's just going to bite them in the ass every time.
At what point does Connor McDavid ask for a trade?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Maybe,
when does he say I'm done here? I'm done. You trade
5
me?
or 6 years, maybe. I think when you're in your late 20s.
What if they have another year like this next year? Does he ask for a trade?
No, I don't think so.
I 100% think he's gone.
You really think so?
Oh, I think he absolutely says this is a dumpster fire.
I'm done. I don't think at any point in the next few years are you going to get half the value back in return for what you're giving.
Yeah, you'll never get it, but it doesn't matter. If he says I want to be traded,
yeah, I guess.
And I'm like, I don't. Obviously, he's going to make a lot of money, but if he says I want to be traded, you're going to make this happen, or I'll take. Like, what do you want him to do? I mean, I guess if a guy asks for a trade, your only hope is that they have enough integrity, and I'm not saying that he doesn't, but your only hope is that they have enough integrity to go, well, they're not giving me a trade, I'm going to continue to go out and play as hard as I can. Or do they just go, screw you, I'm not going to, I'm going to play like TJ Ratty. Okay, let me ask Ty Ratty.
Yeah, right. Salary cap aside, everything like that, right? If you're Edmonton and you can get rid of, or not get rid of, but if you can get something decent in return for Connor McDavid, right? Say even like Detroit, right? They offer up Dylan Larkin, say, hey, we'll give you Larkin and a first round pick. I know it's not like the return back, but I mean, if you're Edmonton, do you take that? Say, hey, we can salvage something out of this?
Dylan Larkin, your first round pick this year, and your first round pick next year.
Oh, I'm sure it'd be 3 first-round picks.
And we're maybe in the ballpark.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, again, but just in terms of player talent, right? You're obviously a little bit lower, but you're like,
see, I think the only way that they would ever trade him is if they got a
superstar back.
Like, let's go and trade for. Oh, it would have to be a defenseman, like a high level defenseman.
Right. Maybe you're a team. Okay, maybe you're a team like Colorado. You're at the draft and you have the number 1 overall pick.
What about this? What if Drew Doughty gets dealt?
Oh,
to the Oilers.
Okay.
For Connor McDavid, not straight up, but LA sends their first round pick from this year. That might be the first overall pick. What if it was Doughty and your first overall pick for Connor McDavid? Would you do it if you were the Oilers? Then you're getting a player who is at least in the same universe in terms of impact on the ice.
Even if it's the number 2 pick, I think you're still getting a player that's close to talent level. And I mean, even if it's the winger from Finland, you still get a guy who now you're like, oh, we finally got a freaking winger that can play. And we can put him with Nuge and Hopkins or a Draisaitl on the first line, and boom.
It's just never going to happen.
I know.
All right, last but not least, will the St. Louis Blues grab home ice? 4 wins in regulation, 4 wins in a row, and they own, 4 wins. They own the regulation overtime tiebreaker against Nashville. So they certainly have the chance to get in there and
game
get
in hand.
Home ice. Do you think it'll happen?
What
a turnaround it'd be.
I actually do think it will happen. Nashville's been kind of puttering around. They've been 6-3-1 in their last 10, so it's not terrible hockey, but they haven't looked dominant, right? They haven't looked like they really are trying to grab hold of anything, just like St. Louis has been. St. Louis, they go out every night and they play like they're fighting for a bubble spot at this point.
I mean, they play the Rangers, and then they play the Devils, the Avs, the Blackhawks, the Flyers, and the Canucks. The only playoff team they have to play is Colorado.
They should grab it. They absolutely should have it. Yeah. Nashville's got to go to Pittsburgh in their next game. Like, that's going to be a battle. I would not be shocked if Nashville loses that. So, yeah, I really do think that St. Louis.
Yeah, and then they have to go and play Columbus, who Columbus is fighting for their life. They do have Buffalo, Vancouver, Chicago to close out the season. So I would say that there's still almost an auto 2 wins or 3 wins there for Nashville.
There better be.
But I mean, that's those other 2 games. Yeah, it'll be interesting because that home ice, I think, would mean a lot for St. Louis.
St. Louis just beat the hottest team in the league, Vegas, 3-1.
Yes, but especially because Nashville is a hell of a place to play in the playoffs. It really is, yeah. And I don't think you want to, if you can avoid playing there as much as possible, you can start a series at home and you win both those games. You're a lot less scared about going into Winnipeg. Nashville.
My gosh.
Well,
you think in the second round, right? You want to get that series over, and so having home ice would be better. But both these teams on the road and at home, their records are virtually identical. It's not like they're dominant more at one place versus the other. So I don't think either team cares. But again, come playoff time, I would rather have home ice if I'm St. Louis than have to go into Nashville.
I mean, the Bridgestone Arena is quite the place to play. So I guess ultimately I'm kind of pining for that Winnipeg-Nashville rematch.
Second round.
Yeah.
Everybody wants it for sure, but I would not be upset to see St. Louis and Winnipeg. Although, regardless where Nashville and St. Louis play, I might still have a hard time taking St. Louis, even if they're the hotter team, going in.
Yeah.
I think again, so if Binghamton starting, no experience, but whatever. We'll get into that later on down the road.
All right. Well, that is our show. I can't wait for the playoffs.
Dude, so pumped. 10 freaking days away.
As much as I love watching for these things, I'm just like counting down the days. Playoffs start on my birthday. What a birthday gift that'll be.
Congrats.
April 10th. Congrats. Yes, congrats on being born, my friend. It was a beautiful day. All right, well, we will talk to you guys very soon later in the week. Keep on watching hockey. Let us know what you think of what's going on. Tweet us at OT Hockey Talk. We'll talk to you guys soon.